What if the only thing standing between you and your miracle is the fact that you're waiting to see it first? Today, I'm going to show you how belief before evidence can turn praise into power, and power into a miracle that gets you back on your feet again. If this message is speaking to you right now, pause for a second, hit like, share this with someone who needs strength today, and stay with me, because your breakthrough might be closer than you think. Believing before you see anything change is one of the hardest shifts a person can make, because it goes directly against how we've been trained to think. From childhood, we're taught to rely on evidence. Proof first, then confidence. But real faith reverses that order. It begins with a decision deep inside, not a feeling, not a sign, and not a visible improvement. It is a settled inner conviction that refuses to be negotiated by circumstances. At first, this kind of belief feels unnatural. Your mind will argue, your senses will contradict you, and your environment may even reinforce the opposite of what you're choosing to believe. But belief at this level is not about ignoring facts. It's about choosing which reality has the final authority in your life. You acknowledge what is, but you anchor yourself in what can be. This is where many people miss it. They wait for something external to change before they allow themselves to believe internally. They say, once I see progress, then I'll be confident. But that approach keeps them stuck in a cycle where nothing shifts because the inner condition never changes first. True belief doesn't come as a reaction. It comes as a declaration. And here's the deeper part. Belief must be consistent. It's not something you turn on for a moment and then abandon when pressure rises. It's something you return to again and again, especially when nothing seems to be happening. In those quiet, unseen moments, belief is actually doing its greatest work, shaping your perspective, strengthening your resolve, and preparing you for the outcome you've already accepted internally. Over time, that inner conviction begins to influence your words, your posture, and even your smallest decisions. You start to carry yourself differently, not because you see the result, but because you've already agreed with it inside. And that alignment between what you believe and how you live becomes the foundation upon which visible change is eventually built. Turning praise into power is a principle that goes far deeper than emotion or outward expression. Most people associate praise with a reaction, something you do after things improve, after a breakthrough happens, or when life finally makes sense again. But real praise, the kind that carries transformative power, begins precisely when there is no visible reason for it. It is a deliberate choice to focus on strength rather than struggle, even while standing in the middle of uncertainty. At first, this feels almost contradictory. Your situation may be loud, pressing, and uncomfortable, demanding your full attention. Every instinct tells you to analyze it, talk about it, and dwell on it. But praise interrupts that cycle. It redirects your focus away from the weight of the problem and places it on the possibility of resolution. This shift may seem small, but internally it changes everything. What you consistently focus on begins to shape your emotional and mental state, and that state influences how you respond to life. Praise also has a stabilizing effect. When fear tries to rise, praise grounds you. When doubt begins to whisper, praise speaks louder. It's not about denying what you feel. It's about choosing what you magnify. Over time, this creates a resilience that isn't easily shaken by external conditions. You become less reactive and more anchored, not because the situation has changed yet, but because your inner posture has. Another important aspect is that praise reinforces belief. The more you speak positively and express confidence, the more natural that belief becomes. Your words start aligning with what you've decided internally, and this alignment builds momentum. You're no longer divided between hope and hesitation. You begin to move with clarity. Eventually, praise stops feeling like an effort and becomes a habit. It becomes your default response instead of worry or complaint. And in that consistency, something powerful happens. You create an environment within yourself where strength, clarity, and expectation can grow regardless of what is happening around you. Acting like it's already done is where belief becomes visible, because action reveals what you truly accept as real. Many people say they believe, and they may even speak positively, but their actions still reflect hesitation, fear, or uncertainty. This creates a disconnect. When your behavior doesn't match your belief, it weakens the very thing you're trying to build. But when your actions align with your inner conviction, something shifts. You begin to move with purpose instead of doubt. At first, this kind of action feels uncomfortable. You may feel like you're stepping out without enough support or moving ahead of what makes sense logically. But that discomfort is often a sign that you're breaking out of old patterns. Acting in faith doesn't mean being reckless. It means making decisions that reflect where you believe you're going, not where you currently are. It's a quiet confidence expressed through small, intentional steps. These actions don't have to be dramatic. In fact, they are often simple and consistent. It might be how you carry yourself, the choices you make daily, or the way you respond to opportunities. Instead of holding back, you lean forward. Instead of waiting for perfect conditions, you start preparing as if the outcome is already on its way. This kind of movement sends a clear message to your mind. You are no longer undecided. Another important aspect is that action builds momentum. Each step you take reinforces your belief and makes the next step easier. You begin to see yourself differently, not as someone stuck, but as someone progressing. This shift in identity is powerful because it changes how you approach challenges. You stop reacting from fear and start responding from expectation. Over time, these consistent actions create tangible results. What once felt distant starts to take shape in your reality. And even before the full outcome appears, you notice something has already changed. You're stronger, more confident, and no longer waiting on permission to move forward. What sustains everything you've started, belief, praise, and action, is persistence, because without it, even the strongest beginning can fade under pressure. Many people step out with confidence at first, but when results don't appear quickly, they begin to question what they once held firmly. This is where consistency becomes more important than intensity. It's not about how strongly you start, but how steadily you continue. Persistence is the ability to remain unchanged in your direction, even when everything around you feels uncertain. It means you don't let time dictate your conviction. Delays can be misleading. They often suggest that nothing is happening, when in reality things are developing beneath the surface. If you allow waiting to weaken you, you may step back at the very moment things are beginning to align. There is also a mental battle in persistence. Thoughts will arise that challenge your progress, suggesting that it's pointless to continue or that you've misjudged everything. This is where discipline comes in. You don't entertain every thought. You choose which ones deserve your attention. By doing that, you protect the belief you've been building and prevent doubt from taking root. Another key part of persistence is maintaining the same attitude you had at the beginning. It's easy to stay positive when you feel motivated, but true strength is shown when you can hold that same mindset without emotional reinforcement. You continue to believe, continue to speak positively, and continue to act. Not because you feel inspired every moment, but because you've made a decision that doesn't change. Over time, persistence produces a quiet confidence. You stop being shaken by delays or distractions, because you understand that progress is not always visible immediately. And when the outcome finally begins to show, it doesn't feel like luck or coincidence. It feels like the natural result of something you refuse to abandon. Gratitude deepens everything you've been building because it shifts your awareness from what is missing to what is already present and working in your favor. While belief sets the direction, praise strengthens your focus, and action moves you forward. Gratitude stabilizes your heart so you don't become restless or discouraged along the way. It keeps you grounded even when progress feels slow or invisible. Most people treat gratitude as something reserved for big outcomes, something they express only after everything has fallen into place. But real gratitude begins much earlier. It starts in the middle of the process, when things are still forming and nothing looks complete yet. Choosing to be thankful in that stage requires intention, because it asks you to recognize value in what others might overlook. It trains your mind to notice small signs of progress, subtle shifts, and even the strength you're gaining internally. There's also a quiet power in gratitude because it removes pressure. When you're constantly focused on what hasn't happened yet, you can become tense, impatient, and even doubtful. Gratitude releases that tension. It allows you to appreciate where you are while still moving toward where you're going. This balance is important because it prevents frustration from draining your energy or clouding your perspective. Another important aspect is that gratitude protects your mindset. It becomes a filter that helps you interpret situations differently. Instead of seeing delays as failures, you begin to see them as part of a process. Instead of feeling stuck, you recognize that you're still moving, even if the pace is slower than expected. This shift doesn't ignore challenges, but it keeps them from defining your outlook. Over time, gratitude creates a sense of completeness within you, even before the final result appears. You're no longer dependent on outcomes to feel settled or confident. And from that place, your belief becomes stronger, your actions become more consistent, and your overall journey becomes more steady and sustainable. Focus determines the direction of everything you experience, because whatever consistently holds your attention begins to shape your thoughts, emotions, and ultimately your outcomes. Even when you've built belief, developed a habit of praise, taken action, stayed persistent, and practiced gratitude, a scattered or negative focus can quietly pull you off course. That's why guarding your attention becomes essential. Your mind naturally drifts toward what feels urgent or intense, and often that means problems, fears, or uncertainties. If you allow that drift to go unchecked, your focus will become dominated by what's wrong rather than what's possible. Over time, this creates an internal environment where doubt feels stronger than confidence. But focus is not something that just happens. It's something you direct. You decide what deserves your attention and what doesn't. This doesn't mean ignoring challenges or pretending difficulties don't exist. It means you don't let them occupy the center of your thinking. You acknowledge them, but you don't dwell on them. Instead, you intentionally return your attention to what aligns with your belief, progress, possibility, and the outcome you've already accepted internally. That repeated redirection strengthens your mindset and keeps you aligned with your purpose. Another important aspect of focus is consistency. It's not enough to think positively for a moment and then spend the rest of the day consumed by worry. What you revisit repeatedly is what takes root. By consistently choosing where your attention goes, you begin to train your mind to stay aligned with your direction rather than reacting to every external change. Over time, a disciplined focus creates clarity. You become less distracted by noise and more aware of opportunities, next steps, and subtle progress. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, you feel directed. And in that clarity, your energy is no longer divided. It is concentrated, moving steadily toward the result you've been building from the inside out. Your words carry more weight than most people realize because they are not just expressions of thought. They are reinforcements of belief. Every time you speak, you are either strengthening what you want to see or giving more authority to what you're trying to overcome. even when everything else is in place. Belief, praise, action, persistence, gratitude, and focus. Careless or negative speech can quietly undo that progress. Most people speak based on how they feel in the moment. If they feel discouraged, their words reflect defeat. If they feel uncertain, their words reflect doubt. But this creates a cycle where their speech keeps feeding the very condition they want to change. To break that cycle, your words have to be intentional. Instead of echoing your current situation, they need to align with where you've decided you're going. This doesn't mean denying reality or pretending challenges don't exist. It means you don't give those challenges the final say. You may acknowledge what is happening, but you don't build your language around it. Instead, you choose words that support your belief, reinforce your direction, and remind you of what you've already committed to internally. There is also a consistency required in this. Speaking positively once or twice won't create much change if the rest of your conversations are filled with negativity. What you say repeatedly is what settles into your thinking. Over time, your words begin to shape your expectations, and those expectations influence your actions and reactions. Another important part is that your words affect not only you, but also the environment around you. The way you speak can either build confidence in others or spread doubt. When your language is steady, constructive, and aligned with belief, it creates a sense of stability that people can feel. Eventually, your words and your belief become one. You no longer struggle to speak positively. It becomes natural because it reflects what you truly accept inside. And in that alignment, your speech stops being just communication and becomes a consistent force that supports the life you are building. Testimonies are powerful because they are living proof that what once seemed impossible can become reality. They are not just stories. They are evidence that belief, when held consistently and acted upon, produces visible change. Every testimony carries a hidden message. If it happened here, it can happen again. And that message builds faith in others who are still standing in their own waiting season. When you look at a testimony, you're not just hearing about an outcome, you're seeing a process that overcame resistance. Behind every breakthrough is a period where nothing looked different, where doubt tried to dominate, and where persistence was the only thing keeping hope alive. That's why testimonies matter. They remind you that delay is not denial and silence is not absence of progress. There is also something deeply strengthening about hearing what someone has walked through. It shifts your perspective from isolation to possibility. You realize you're not the only one who has faced uncertainty, and you're not the only one who has had to hold on when nothing made sense. That shared experience builds courage because it shows that outcomes are not random, they are reachable. Testimonies also reinforce your own belief system. When you hear repeated evidence of change happening through consistent faith and action, it begins to reshape your expectations. You stop seeing breakthrough as rare and start seeing it as natural for those who refuse to let go. This gradually builds an inner confidence that what you are waiting for is not outside the realm of possibility. But the deepest part of a testimony is not just what it shows, it's what it activates. It stirs something inside you that says, if it happened for them, it can happen for me. That inner awakening is often the beginning of renewed strength, renewed focus, and renewed commitment. And when your own testimony eventually becomes someone else's encouragement, the cycle continues. What once strengthened you becomes the very thing that strengthens others, proving that every step you took in faith was never wasted. It was building evidence for someone else's hope. So hear this clearly. Everything begins the moment you decide to believe before you see. Not after the proof, not after the feeling, but right in the middle of uncertainty. That is where real transformation is born. When belief becomes your foundation, praise becomes your posture, action becomes your movement, persistence becomes your strength, gratitude becomes your stability, focus becomes your direction, your words become your agreement, and testimonies become your confirmation that nothing was ever wasted. You were never meant to live controlled by what you see. You were meant to shape what you see by what you carry on the inside. And even when everything around you says stop, there is something deeper within you that says stand. That is not imagination. That is the beginning of change already forming beneath the surface. So don't wait for the visible before you become confident. Don't wait for the result before you align your life with it. Step into belief now. Speak like it is already working. Move like it is already happening, because what you consistently hold on the inside will eventually show up on the outside. And when it finally does, you won't call it luck. You won't call it coincidence. You will recognize it as the harvest of what you refused to let go of when nothing made sense. And you'll look back and realize the moment you believed before you saw, that was the moment everything started changing.